We are going to shift gears a little bit here. The first two talks, of course, were about sheep. I was asked to come talk about goat program that I've been doing. I call it the Goat Herd Improvement Program, GHIP. I've been conducting this. You asked me earlier if this was new. Well, I started this when I started Kentucky State University in 2005. So is it new? If you look at it compared to what's been done in cattle and sheep, it's very new. We're decades behind in the goat industry of what the sheep and the cattle industry are. We're looking at around 60 years behind them. However, if you look at time-wise, we're talking about 8 years or so here. It's not real new, but it has been a very big challenge. And one of the things I'll say is that dealing with goat producers, a lot of the stuff that Deborah's talking about with what she's seeing with the sheep producers in the state, I'm seeing with goat producers in this state, and whenever I'm talking at other states, at meetings that I've been invited to, same type of problems. The people are coming in, they have no clue of animal agriculture or agriculture in a lot of cases, period. And they're jumping into goats because somebody said you can make a lot of money with goats real quick. And then they come in, they're having a disaster, and they're trying to figure out what is going on, how do I fix this? I've had most all positions available in the extension up to where I'm at now. I've been a county agent, a 4-H agent, and a state specialist. So I've dealt at all levels, so I understand some of what's going on out there and what some of our coworkers experience. One of the things I do is when I talk to producers, I start out about this program, I start out with a couple of quotes. This is one of those quotes that I've always found very interesting and helps explain, I believe, some of what's going on with other things. But in each generation of animals in his flock, herd or flock, the breeder must select those to be safe for breeding from those to be used for other purposes. Perhaps he will also select animals from other herds to use as breeders in his. These are the most important things he does. And as you can see down here, this was from Breeding Better Livestock, published in 1953. And yes, I have read the book. It was one that I acquired whenever I was in grad school and found very interesting. And I read that book along with a couple of other of the old breeding books because I was dealing with goats and started looking, and one of the things I found is every time I proposed doing something, every time I tried to move forward, I couldn't find the data to give me the information I needed to put together a program to talk to producers about where things are. I can't find anywhere in the literature what should the birth weight of a goat be. What should the weaning weight be? What is the expected average daily gain? This general data that is known by everybody in the animal science industry for cattle, sheep, goats, or cattle and sheep, hogs, is not there for goats. However, whenever I propose a research project to find it, I'm told it's out there. And I think what's happening is because the stuff for cattle, this basic information for cattle, for sheep, for dairy cattle, for swine has been done back in the 50s, 60s, and it's been there for so long, it's just assumed that it's there for goats as well. I also know that my colleagues in the 1890 system, whenever I talk about doing research projects, they tell me, oh, we did that. I say, well, where's it published? I think we put it in a field day proceeding somewhere. I said, well, how am I supposed to find it if it's not out there in the literature? So it's a struggle in the goat industry to get stuff going and to do things. But I believe this is a very good quote, and what I tell producers is the reason this is the most important thing is, Deborah, you mentioned everybody thinks about nutrition and health and repro. Well, we can change the nutrition of that animal today if we choose. We can go out and we can treat it for a disease. We can affect its reproduction. Genetics is fixed at conception. That's why this is so important. We have that one shot at getting it right. And I think the reason most people try to ignore it is because, well, I can't do anything about it. I'm going to do what I can. I can pick these animals. I'm going to put them out there. That's all I can do. If I have a nutritional disaster, I can go out and I can supplement them. I can change my nutritional program. This cannot be changed. I believe that's one of the things, that's why I use this quote in my presentations to producers on this subject. We developed the goat herd improvement program, and I know this is not unusual for cattle producers or sheep producers either, but basically I was finding nobody in the goat industry, the meat goat industry in particular, that was collecting or utilizing performance data. I actually had meetings where people would come up to me after the meeting and talk to me about their animals and tell me how many ennobled animals were in the pedigree of my best doe or my best sire. I said, okay, what does ennobled mean? And they looked at me like, what? They didn't know. But they had been told by somebody else, this is a great thing, it's ennobled. Finally, I had to explain to them that ennobled simply means it's won so many shows and its offspring has won so many shows, and that's all it is. It has nothing to do with the performance of that animal. Little data was available in the literature on goat performance. At the time I started at Kentucky State University, the American Boar Goat Association had begun their Begin program, which was an attempt by them to collect performance data to do EPD calculations. They were working with the sheep industry, with Dave Notter at Virginia Tech, and they were going to do EPD calculations. He actually got enough data to make a preliminary run. They were never able to collect enough data to make a complete EPD run. The two Kiko associations at the time, there's now a third Kiko breed association out there, agreed to work together to collect data to have an analysis run. They were not able to collect enough data to even get a preliminary data run, according to Dave Notter. They simply could not get the data run. And the reason is nobody in the commercial industry, goat industry, nobody in the purebred industry was selecting or purchasing based on performance. They were going out and saying, this animal looks good, I'm going to buy it and use it. So we developed this program to try to get producers to collect data. And one of the things I believe that happened is if you think back the way the beef cattle industry started with data collection that led to the current EPD, it was not with EPDs. They started with cow herd improvement programs, CHIP programs. Okay? They started with commercial producers collecting data. The Beef Improvement Association started out. This is how they got data collected to begin with. Even the sheep industry started out with basic data collection on farm, getting producers to understand the value of that performance data. In the goat industry, they were wanting to skip all of that and say, let's go straight to EPDs. We even have people saying, why are we doing EPDs? We should just do genomics. Okay? They just don't understand that we've got to have this basic data to know where we're at to begin with. So, wanted to develop a basic program that producers could use. It would be easy, it would be simple, and that they could utilize it. The goat herd improvement program is based on the cow herd improvement programs that I grew up with. It utilizes basic data for commercial cattlemen. I'm doing this for goat producers now. I'm asking the producers to simply collect birth to weaning data. Birth date, birth weight, type of birth. Single, twin, triplet. Even as somebody told me they had quints one time. Keep that data, keep a weaning date, weaning weight, type of rearing. Was it raised as single, raised as twin? I'm trying to do it as basic as possible. What I've told producers is, I need dam ID. That should be easy. You should know who the mother is. I've had people say, well, we mob breed. Say, okay, just don't give me sire data, sire ID. I have people tell me for some reason they can't collect birth weights. I'm not 100% sure why they can't weigh it at birth, okay? I tell them a simple fish scale will take birth weights. But they tell me I can't do it, and I'm not talking about people running thousands of animals here. I'm talking about people with 10 animals. Tell me they cannot collect birth weight. Okay? So we have to work on that. But the idea is if they submit that data to me, I take the adjustment factors that Dave Notter calculated with the board group that he was able to do a calculation with, and I adjust for type of birth, age of dam, type of rearing, sex of the kid. Adjust to a 90-day average weight for weaning, and I provide them summary data back with this adjusted data and a basic performance ratio for birth and weaning weight. So it makes it very easy for them to go in and rank their kids. I actually do it because I do this in a spreadsheet. Rank their kids, rank their does on production. And so they're able to look at that and say, which kids are my best? Which ones are best at weaning? Which ones grew the best to weaning on an adjusted basis? And the reason I do the dam summary, and I take the dam summary and I combine the weight of the kids that she produced and weaned. People tell me that I'm hurting their best does by doing that. And it takes a little bit of time. Deborah, your undergraduates can't do the math. I try to tell these producers, and this is the example I use, that usually starts some wheels turning. You've got a doe out here who's weaning a nice 60-pound kid at weaning, but it's a single. You've got this one over here that weaned two 40-pound twins. I go, who sold the most weight? It's amazing how many of them have to stop and think about that. Okay? But that's what we were running into. Most of them were sitting there and they were looking at that single-born kid saying, look how great it looks. They were turning and looking at Mama. Look how good she looks. She's still slick. She's got this great big kid at her side. She must be doing me a good job. Then they looked over here at this set of triplets. They looked okay, but they weren't great. They looked at the dam. She's thin. She just looks like she's about ready to die. It's like, she's not doing a good job at all. Her kids don't look good. She looks terrible. I'm going to ship her. And what they were winding up doing is getting rid of their most productive doe because they were not utilizing data. So we're trying to do this, and that's what I'm doing with these summaries that I supply the producers with. Give you a little bit of idea of participation. I said I started doing this in 2005, started pushing herds to do this in 2005. As of 2012, I have 52 herds with data in the program. Most of those are active. I do have a few herds that have dropped out. Some of those herds have gone away. I try to keep this as the active herds. I have a total of 7,501 kid records, 3,899 dam records in the data set. I started this program in Kentucky, and some people heard about it in other states and asked, can we send you their data? I said, sure, why not? Frank Pinkerton picked this up. Those of you who know Frank, worked for USDA, worked for UK, worked for Langston, known as the Goat Man in the Goat Rancher publication. He has pushed this program in the Goat Rancher. I wound up with some contacts in Canada through that. I have 24 states and 3 Canadian provinces represented in the data set. That was never my intention. But I said, why not? I'm not being stressed to do the data. Okay? The data includes IDs, age of dam, sex, breed type, type of birth, rearing, birth, and weaning weight. And I've asked them to take weaning or weight of that dam at weaning. And I've done this for 2 reasons. That's one of those data points that most people aren't sending me. But number one, I'm trying to get them to weigh that doe at least once a year. Okay? Run her across the scale. Second thing is I'm trying to figure out some issues of efficiency. We're seeing that sometimes, just like in other species, that real large, heavy-bodied doe doesn't wean proportionally the same amount of kid weight as a smaller doe. And again, as we're looking at efficiency in these small herds, that's an issue. We've got a lot of producers who talk to me and brag about how big their does are, how big their bucks are. You know, they're sitting there, they're getting 150, 180-pound does. And they're telling me what a great job they're doing, and I'm looking at their kids and scratching my head saying, you know, I've got better kids from 100-pound does at the research farm. And so I'm trying to do something to show them some of that. And it also is showing them, this is another way I show them that that doe with singles is not doing her job. What we do is we adjust for birth type, rearing, sex, and age of dam when they provide that. Average daily gain and weight per day of age are calculated. Again, some of these people are not giving me birth weight, so I can't do a real average daily gain, so that's why we're doing weight per day of age as well. We adjust to 90 days because that's what the industry is saying average weaning weight would be. I've got people who are weaning as early as 60 days. I've got some that are weaning at 120 days. I've got some who try to tell me they don't wean their goats. I tell them, pick a day, weigh them, send me the weights, okay? If you want to leave them on mama, that's your choice. The kid, dam, and sire summaries are provided to the producers for their use. I tell them if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to provide any information. But I try to insist that they use this and set their own goals. Use this as one of their tools. I've had people who have looked at this and said, well, which one of these should I keep? I say, well, I can't tell you because I can't see the animal. I can't tell whether she's got a good udder. I can't tell whether her feet and legs are good. I can't tell whether her mouth is correct. So I can't tell you which one to keep. I can tell you which one performance-wise is the best, but they have to look at that. I'm trying to get them to start doing a more complete job of evaluating those animals. The biggest response I'm getting from producers is they're finding that dam summary the most useful. One of the reasons for that is most of them, by the time they send me the data, they've already done their selection on the kids. They've already sold what they're going to sell and decided to keep what they're going to keep. Then they get the data back and they look at those does. I actually have one producer, and I like telling this story. It's actually a friend of mine. He raises sheep, his wife raises goats. Deborah may know who I'm talking about. He convinced his wife to participate in my program. He said there was this one particular goat that I wanted to make sure she got rid of. He goes, I got her to participate in your program and we were going to cull the does based on that. He came into a meeting and said, I hate you. I said, okay, why? He goes, told me that, and he goes, the one doe I wanted to get rid of, guess who was who was her best producing doe? He said, not only was I not able to get rid of her, but I had to admit to my wife that she was right. He said, that's why I hate you today. But they're finding that dam summary very, very useful. And all it is combining that data so they can look and see who's doing the best, who's weaning the most weight for them. And like I said, I use total birth and weaning weight on the dam summary. That's the ones that they're using. There are some producers that are telling me that they have started utilizing the information in marketing on their kids, being able to have that data available. I actually was very pleased. I had a couple of producers that have been doing this that are purebred producers that started using it in marketing, and they reported back to me last year that one of them did, that he actually had 2 people contacted him looking for breeding stock, and the first thing they asked is, do you have data? I think that's progress. It's slow, but I think we're starting to get there. And what I keep telling producers is if they never ask for data, the seed stock suppliers will never bother to collect the data. Because if it's no value to them, why should they bother doing it? The concern is over proper use of the data between years and farms. This is an on-farm performance test procedure. The data is only good on that farm for that year. And I do have some farms that do 3 distinct kiddings a year, and I make sure I tell them that the data is only good for that kidding, that contemporary group. I'm a little concerned about making sure we get enough education to everybody so they understand that and use the data properly. but at least they're doing something. The Canadian Association that I'm dealing with, that is starting to send me some data now, their national association, has asked me if I would be willing to collect this data, and if they ever get enough data submitted, work with them to get some EPDs done. I don't think I'm personally set up to do the EPDs, but I'm more than happy to collect the data, and whenever that time comes, maybe the University of Guelph, since they're in Canada, or Land Plan now in Australia, somebody else that they can contract with to do that. Look at what I find, and I did this analysis for Southern Section Animal Science meeting, so this is 2012 data, up to 2012. This is in kilograms. I thought about converting it back and said, well, this is more of a scientific group, so you'll understand using kilograms, I hope. But looking at the birth weights, you can see my, get the wrong button there. You can see my numbers here that I've got for birth weight, weaning weight, gain, and 90-day weight. You can see what we're finding as the mean here. I have a lot of producers that swear that these two weights should be a lot higher. And I tell them, well, collect the data, send it to me, and we'll get it there. Very few of them bother to collect the data, or if they do, they don't bother to send it to me. I think what's happening is a lot of them are finding that this data is more correct than they want it to be. When I look at by sex, again, I did include the wethers up here. I will say that most people are not reporting wethers to me. That makes me a little leery of my sex comparisons. Because I know that a number of people that are reporting them as bucks castrated and did not report them as wethers, because I know the individuals and I know that they're selling show wethers. But I can't go in and say which one did they castrate and which one didn't they. I know a lot of commercial goat producers aren't bothering to castrate. In the marketplace for goats, there's not a discount for intact males. If they grow faster, selling them by the pound, the testicles have weight. And any time that there has been a preference, the preference has been for intact males. You get into selling to the ethnic groups, the Islamic groups, they're looking for an unblemished animal. Castration is a major blemish. So anytime that there does seem to be a preference, it's for an intact male. But what we found is what would be expected. We are seeing goats are following the normal expected trends. Bucks being heavier than does who are heavier, and wethers being somewhat intermediate. Again, I know this is a lot of data, but again, we're finding somewhat similar trends in weaning weight, average daily gain, weight per day of age, and 90-day weight with the different birth and rearing types. Nothing spectacular here, but again, when you go to look in the literature to find this information, it's very limited in goats. You can find a lot of data in this area in sheep, but not a lot in goats. And what I find is a lot of the stuff in goats tends to be in a little bit more obscure journals. It also tends to be in field day publications. It doesn't seem to make the mainstream publications in literature. And I know a lot of that is simply because goats were not considered a major livestock species. They did not receive a lot of emphasis in research up until about 10, 15 years ago, when the meat goat industry really started to explode. It's still a minor industry in this country, but it has had such rapid growth, people are hungry for information. I'll kind of wrap this up here. I believe the performance data will be critical for the future of the meat goat industry. And I believe we've got to get more producers collecting that data. We've got to find ways to do this. I also believe that producers' acceptance of performance data is slowly growing. That's going to be critical down the road. We can go as scientists and do a lot of things. There are people pushing, there are people working on the genome, goat genome, trying to find what genes are out there, what improvements we can make. if we can't get somebody to take birth weights and weaning weights, how valuable is genomics really going to be to them? We're not even talking about an industry that has EPDs. The sheep industry has EPDs. The cattle industry, the dairy industry. You know, the EPDs aren't that great in the sheep, but they're there, okay? We can't even get them to collect the basic data. Large, small, intermediate, it doesn't matter. Trying to get them to collect this basic data is a struggle. We need to work on getting some better adjustment factors. It's amazing to me the number of Kiko breeders who think that the adjustment factors I'm using are Kiko adjustment factors because they're published on the Kiko website. But they were calculated with boar data. I know that because I've talked to Dave Notter who did the calculations. He never got enough data from the Kikos to do the calculations. I'm getting my data set about to that point where I think I can begin to do some of those. But like I said, sex is a problem. Age of dam, again, they're not, a lot of these people are commercial producers. They don't know how old that doe is. They bought a doe. Okay? We need basic data collection to build the databases in the meat goat industry to start making some of these general information to help producers set goals so that they can make progress. I'm also, like Deborah, trained in quantitative and population genetics. I was going through college when molecular was coming around. People were saying it's going to be the future. I looked at it and said, I don't want to spend my life sitting in a lab, okay? But we've got to have this data. I don't believe we can do the molecular effectively without this information, without the quantitative and population information. We've got to know what's going on out there to know where we're at. I do collect breed information. It is producer-supplied breed information, so again, it's not a registry information. I am seeing some differences when I look at that between the breeds, as would be expected. But again, just like the weather and buck information, I'm a little leery because I know there are people out there who say they've got boar goats because it's got a white body and a red head. Okay? But that is the challenge in the meat goat industry right now. This is one of the things we're trying to do for it. My success has grown. I know of at least 2 other programs in the U.S. that are trying to do similar type of work, getting producers to do on-farm performance tests. One's in Tennessee and the other one's in Alabama. I know the person at Tennessee State who's doing that one is trying to work with the people in Brazil who are doing EPD calculations for the industry in Brazil. So what he's trying to do is take the data he collects, is pool it with theirs to get EPD calculations back to his people. The person down at Auburn who's doing this in meat goats in Alabama, he's got a more complicated process to get his producers. I haven't heard a lot of reports back from him other than I know that he's going. He tried to get that to be multi-state. He did not get the grant he was needing to get that multi-state. And my program is I try to keep it simple and basic.